You're late, Amon. And who are they?
You will enjoy this. They are the ones who took down Zhang Jiao, and I came upon them by chance. Who would not be tempted, bring them along.
Is that so?
Romance of the Three Kingdoms is a 500-year-old, 800,000-word epic novel detailing the fall of the Chinese Han Dynasty. It's been translated into multiple languages, adapted into movies, graphic novels, plays, and notably video games, with the Mega Forces Dynasty Warriors franchise cribbing heavily from the historical tome, albeit with a little extra nonsense thrown in. Now, Koei Tecmo, publishers of Dynasty Warriors, have teamed up once again with Team Ninja to bring us a new version of the saga in Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Like Nioh and its sequel, Wolong is set in a fantastical version of its origin country, in this case China instead of Japan. Here, legendary warlords like Dong Zhao, Cao Cao and Lu Bu, and I apologise already for my awful pronunciation of Chinese names, are depicted battling with the aid of ancient magic, terrifying demons and powerful armies. And rather than it being just a war for power or rule, the subject of most of the conflict is an eldritch elixir that can grant the power over life, death and the elements. Your character is a nameless soldier thrust into the centre of a countrywide conflict which sees you travelling the land to face down armies of demons, monsters, men and beasts led by monstrous bosses and evil sorcerers. Anyone familiar with Nioh will likely feel comfortable with Wolong's art style and movement, but the game does its level best to make you regret such assumptions pretty quickly. For a start, this is a lot more reliant on parrying than Nioh was, and a strong offence will only carry you so far. Enemies can interrupt your combos with fatal blows that you must parry or you risk taking massive damage, but even then, that's only scratching the toenail of the colossus that is Wolong Fallen Dynasty's combat system. This is a title that heaps mechanics on mechanics in the early game, forcing you to adapt and integrate each element into your repertoire to survive. For example, not only are there multiple weapon archetypes, but they also come with dozens of different stats and buffs and debuffs attached that you'll need to study when creating your build. Then there's armour, with separate stats for physical protection, defence, elemental defence. You can use ranged weapons, bombs, special moves, summon divine beasts, and employ wizardry to help you overcome your foes. Combat takes a long time to feel comfortable with, as even the block and parry commands are on separate buttons. It's a game that requires absolute concentration and an acceptance that to succeed you'll first need to fail quite a lot. Enemies come at you in numbers and they move fast. They have different wind-ups and tells and varying attack delays to throw you off balance when attempting a parry. Even putting some distance between you and them can be hard because they're so incredibly aggressive, forcing you to block and parry in quick succession, which admittedly looks pretty great in motion. To compensate for this, Wolong Fallen Dynasty employs a unique stamina management system. You have a spirit gauge at the foot of the screen that remains in a neutral position outside of combat. Once you engage, you must attempt to keep the gauge in the blue as you use it to cast wizardry spells, dodge, parry and attack. The further it slides into orange, the less you'll be able to perform those actions, which can render you utterly defenceless if you become staggered. Each fight, whether with a single enemy or a boss, becomes a dance as you attempt to manage your various skills and abilities while balancing your spirit. On top of all of this, Wolong also uses a dynamic difficulty system that allows you to make the game harder or easier, with some important caveats. You can't simply adjust a slider, for example. Each enemy you face has a morale rank which determines their willingness to engage you in combat. If your morale is higher than theirs, you'll do more damage and take less, a system that also applies to bosses. You raise morale by defeating enemies and parrying attacks, or by finding and planting fortitude flags around the mission area. Your morale rank cannot drop below the fortitude level of the mission area, although death will reset it to that level. What this means is that you can make all encounters easier by grinding out the level before facing a boss. It's not a perfect system, as the usual Souls-like boss run after death can stretch to 10 or 20 minutes if you really want to give yourself an edge, but it's a system that allows you to make the game easier for a price. It's so much more satisfying than a simple difficulty slider, but it can be frustrating if you're repeatedly losing to the same enemy. Of course, you can also summon reinforcements. The multiplayer element allows you to summon other players to either duel or work with you to tackle areas up to defeating a boss. Failing that, you can also summon NPC companions. Some are with you due to the story, though you can use an item to send them away outside of cutscenes if you'd rather go it alone, and you can often summon a second NPC helper for tougher fights. They don't have a huge amount of HP, but are great for taking an enemy's threat away from you while you heal or regroup. Interestingly, there are also enemies in the game that are able to summon new allies to fight you, including other players. Seeing a named enemy appear and come running towards you is pretty scary anyway, but to realise there's a human being in control can be quite terrifying. As with any Souls-like or Neo-like, you'll have a finite number of healing potions, in this case called Dragon Cure Pots, between each battle flag. It's at these flags that you level up by spending genuine chi and can buy supplies, change your divine beast or learn wizardry spells based on which element you're applying your chi to. Each element represents a different set of stats and abilities, water for stealth and spirit gain for example, or wood for healing and buffs. But for all of these systems, Wo Long can feel like an incredibly busy, even oppressive experience. While you have the freedom to travel between missions, here called battlefields, and it will remember your progress in each, even if you're at the boss door, every mission of a level worth tackling is an uphill task. Clumsy fingers will switch weapons mid-fight instead of casting a spell. You need to hold RT down for both, you see, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed when facing more than one enemy. Often your AI allies don't help and fights can devolve into a mess of limbs and swords, and you won't know who's winning until someone dies. It throws one of its toughest bosses at you in the first area, and from then on the difficulty is somewhat erratic, with a few late game bosses feeling like pushovers compared to earlier ones. Even standard enemies vary massively in their level of challenge, making it difficult to find a rhythm at times. The speed of movement doesn't help some of the platforming sections either, and the double jump you inexplicably have seems to vary in its reach. Although this may be different from player to player. The more you engage with Wo Long systems, the more comfortable they'll become, and the malleable difficulty is a bonus for less skilled players, though it's worth noting it's not possible everywhere. If there's a problem with Wo Long, it's the uneven technical performance. From outright crashes to the frame rate plummeting to the low 20s in certain areas, it can really struggle at times. There's also an issue with texture popping. I don't have the most powerful PC running with a creaky Ryzen 5 3600X and an RTX 2060 graphics card, but I managed to run it on high settings with a consistent frame rate outside of specific areas. I also tried it on Steam Deck where it just isn't optimized yet. A central hub allows you to upgrade your gear, which is highly recommended, and explore for secrets, while you can transmogrify your gear for a cost by visiting the blacksmith, and if one open area is too tough, try somewhere else to increase your skills, stats or gather materials to improve your gear. Wo Long Fallen Dynasty offers a more specialised challenge than Neo 2 did. The reliance on parrying and juggling multiple combat elements is stronger here, and even coming to grips with many of its systems will take time and effort, but there's an interesting epic story running in the background that sees you rubbing shoulders with many legendary heroes and villains, and some great cutscenes to tie it all together. Head into Wo Long Fallen Dynasty with the right frame of mind to push through its steep challenge, and you'll find a well-made, enjoyable adventure that simply refuses to pull its punches. And for that reason, I'm going to score Wo Long Fallen Dynasty an 8.5 out of 10. Hi there, hope you enjoyed that review. If you did find it useful, please hit like and subscribe, maybe tag the bell icon too, so you're kept up to date with everything we post going forward. And you can also head over to our Patreon and support us there if you feel like it. We appreciate everything that you guys do for us. In the meantime, I've been Fraser for God is a Geek. That was a review of Wo Long Fallen Dynasty on PC, and you guys have been lovely. Bye.